The second essential that we need to be a disciple, we find in verse 28. And it says this, it says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? See, Jesus here, he's like, hey, you better figure this out. Is this something that you really want to do? Because you're not going to lay a foundation and realize, hey, I'm not able to finish it. If you want to be my disciple, you're going to have to be committed to the cause. Like you're going to have to put some money in, you have to figure out, hey, can I finish this project? And I want to talk about being committed to the cause. See, when you're rock climbing and you are using a belay, and you run that belay through the rope, and it's attached to the top of the rock face, and you're sitting there and you're trying to figure out, man, can I do this? You're putting your commitment to this belay that it will stop you if you pull that rope. You pull that rope in the right way, that it is going to stop you. You are committed to climbing, and I'm putting my trust in this little gadget that works great. But man, there is a commitment that you make when you're hanging off of a rock face, you're hanging onto a rope, and that rope is on that belay. It's a commitment. Are you committed to the cause of Christ? Are you committed to the things that God has for you? See, too often, we give the enemy just a little bit. We're like, God, I've given you so much. I'm going to give you the majority of my life. There's a story of a man a 100 years ago who wanted to sell his home. He was fairly wealthy, wanted to sell his home. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to sell for $2,000. And this poor man, he didn't really have a lot of money. He says, hey, I want to buy your home. I love it. It's beautiful. I just don't have $2,000. How about $1,000? Will you take $1,000? That's 50%. And the guy's like, the homeowner's like, man, I don't know, 50%, $1,000. I'll tell you what. I'll sell you the home for $1,000, but there's a nail right above the doorway. I want to keep ownership of that nail. You can have the whole house. I just want that one nail. And the guy that's buying it's like, one nail? Sure. You can have the one nail. I got the rest of the house. So this new owner, he buys it, he moves in, he's loving his home. Well, a few years later, the previous owner, he decides, I want my house back. Like, I've traveled, I've done some things, but I love that house, and I want my house back. So he goes back to the guy, and he said, listen, I want to buy my house back. I decided, I've changed my mind. And this new owner is like, well, no, no, it's mine. Sorry, you sold it to me. It's over. So the previous owner, he's like, well, I got that one nail. So he pulls the nail out just a little bit, about halfway, and then he goes and he shoots a raccoon, hangs the dead carcass of the raccoon on the nail over the door. And so the owner now has to walk by this dead carcass of this dead animal every single day. Day after day, it is stinking. It is rotting. Flies are swarming it. The stench is just unbelievable. Until finally, the stench fills the house, and the new owner is finally like, hey, you know what? I'll sell you the house back. Just because he gave him one nail. You see, too often we think, because God, I'm giving you the majority. I'm giving you so much of my life. But the problem is God wants all of it, because when you give the enemy a foothold and you give the enemy just a little bit to play with, man, he can ruin your life. He can ruin everything that God has done in your life and through your life, your marriage, your kids. He can ruin so much when you allow the enemy to have just a little foothold. We need to make sure that we don't give the enemy anything, that we are committed to the cause of Christ, that we give him everything that he has of our lives, of our future. And let me tell you, it can be scary. It can be scary, as that verse said and about Paul, like, hey, it's no longer I, but Christ, it's you that lives in me. I'm going to trust you with everything. God, I'm going to give you control. I'm going to give you my future. It can be scary. But in reality, let me tell you, the scariest times of my life has been when I've walked outside of the plans of God, when I've taken control of the plans and I've made my own decisions that I thought were best for me. Those have been the scariest times of my life. The most peaceful times of my life is when I'm like, all right, God, you're in charge. I'll follow you. Might not make sense, but I'm going to follow you. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to make the decisions that I feel like you're asking me to make. And those are the times that I have peace. Those are the times that might seem a little scary at first, but man, they always work out. It's when we walk and we give and we are committed to the cause of Christ.